Hey folks, the Old Biker Dude Show is an Old Biker Dude feature film presentation. Greetings everybody. Okay, y'all want to hear a little story? Once upon a time, there was an old biker dude who decided to set off on an amazing motorcycle travel adventure featuring camping, cooking, and fishing. I'm an old biker dude, man. Since it's a Monday and there's probably not a whole lot of traffic around, I figured I'd come out and maybe ride up the Blue Ridge Parkway a little bit. I never get tired of riding the Blue Ridge Parkway. I've been on this stretch of road probably 200 times in my life, and it's still the same thrill every time. The scenery is so beautiful. It just overwhelms you, especially on a day like this. It's only around 73 degrees right now, and it's the middle of the day. This is absolutely going to be beautiful. Would you look at that right there? Is that just amazing or what? Where else can you go for a simple little hour and a half ride and see the amazing and stunning beauty of our world like that right there? I gotta tell you, just living in this area or being this close to it is just such a blessing. It really is. You know, I can leave my house on a Saturday and I can be up here in a couple of hours without my trailer on, and I can ride like all day and still make it home by dinner time. And it's just I mean, it's so cool. But I'm gonna run on down here to the next exit. I do need to get back to camp and resituate my solar panel, so I'm taking advantage of the sunlight. Cranberry Ridge. This is the amazing Browning Knob. It's one of the highest points here in the Smokies. Elevation here is 6,200 feet, I think. It was named after Mr. Browning. He was I forget I think his name was Getty Browning, like John Paul Getty. But he was like an engineer back when North Carolina state engineer back when they were doing all this, and he had a lot to do with where they located these overlooks and things like that. Had a real good reputation, especially with the local, the indigenous people. That, a lot of this land falls in the Cherokee, Smoky Mountains National Park, and a lot of it's Indian land. But you know, he worked real hard to secure the rights of way for, you know, most of this parkway. And so, you know, he was really instrumental in being responsible for this. But the ridge is named after him. It's called Browning Knob. And isn't that absolutely just breathtaking right there? I'm here at another one of my favorite locations on the BRP. This is Water Rock Knob, and the unique thing about here is that it offers a wonderful view in both directions. You can stand most anywhere here. And see, I'm gonna pan around. Here's the parking area, but you can also see all the mountains over on that side. Now, for those of you that are interested, I guess I've always sort of prided myself in being a student of history, and a lot of my study has involved the indigenous people of, you know, the United States. I'm a huge fan of the Native American culture and people. I see them as the epitome of everything it stands for to be an American. But part of a very dark period of our history was, and you know, around 1830 we started some legislation that was enacted by President Jackson, Andrew Jackson, that resulted in the Trail of Tears. This area was, you know, commonplace for a lot of different tribes. A lot of people tend to think of the eastern band of the Cherokee Indians when they think of this area of the Smoky Mountains, but there were actually there were Chickasaw Indians, Muskogee Indians, Seminole Indians, for example. The Seminoles are an interesting story. A couple of motorcycles in the background there. But the Seminole Indians ended up in South Florida in the Everglades. And an interesting story about them is they never actually surrendered to the United States Army. The Seminoles are an amazing story, but I'll keep it to, you know, geographical here. That's a story for another day. But you know, naturally, the Trail of Tears, which, you know, is thought of to be Cherokee Indians, but it actually involved a lot of different types of Indians. It's just the Cherokee were the largest. You know, the Cherokee actually was made up of several different sects of Indians also. But United States Army, you know, started forcing the native people to leave the area. They enticed them with, you know, an offer to move out, you know, west to Oklahoma, and you know, there were little areas of Arkansas and stuff, and they guaranteed those that would move a certain amount of acreage and things. But, you know, it was poor property and, you know, not very well suited for farming or agriculture or anything, although that's what the United States government used as sort of a ploy. Personally, I'm ashamed of that, you know, that era of our history. You know, during that time of the forced displacement of those people, there was over 13,000 Native American people that died out of the 50, you know, I'm going out of memory on all this, so 50 or 60,000 people that were displaced and relocated. But there were a lot of the Native Americans that would hide and chose not to participate in being moved out there, and that is what eventually ended up leading to the eastern band of the Cherokee Indians, and the, you know, the reservations and, you know, everything that exists now in this area. They risked their lives literally, because at that point, once that had been enacted, there around the late 1830s, 1842, 4. Indians had bounties on them. There were people who actually hunted them. As brutal as that sounds, and excuse me, that is brutal to just imagine being forced from your home the land that, you know, this beautiful, beautiful area where they lived, and, you know, relatively peacefully. I mean, they had their spats, you know, just like any, you know, a lot of people, you'll hear them say, yeah, but they didn't get along with them, they fought other Indians. You know what? That takes place all over the world. It's all about establishing the best place you can for you and yours. But the story is amazing because their resiliency, you know, the ones that did stay here were able to hide, and eventually, you know, that wrong was corrected in this area, and they were, you know, they were afforded, you know, the reservation here. And, you know, obviously they are wonderful, you know, they're wonderful curators of the area, because they keep, you know, laws and rules that protect the environment and, you know, the wildlife and so forth. And it's just a wonderful story. Anytime you really want to do some really interesting reading of history, just pull out something involving the Cherokee Indians, or, you know, any of the other, you know, different bands of Native Americans that lived in the area. And the stories are wonderful. There's stories of heroes that went way beyond, you know, way above and beyond to help keep people hidden. And then, you know, on a good note, there were some people, you know, there were foreigners that also did the same thing. A lot of Scottish people ended up sort of breeding in with the Indians. That's, again, another story for another day. Actually, again, one of the longest serving chiefs of the Cherokee Nation was actually a man named John Ross. And he was only like 1/4 Cherokee, I think, and 3/4 Scottish. So, you know, many of us that have Scottish heritage, which, you know, I do, and Irish. I think my great grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, which makes me about 1/32 or something like that. But you know what? I'm as proud of that as I am any of my other known heritage. Because, you know, just to think that I'm in any way somehow maybe connected to any of those people just makes me really proud. Even, you know, when you get to know a Cherokee, if they become your friend, you have a friend for life. And they take friendships very seriously. It's a part of their culture. You know, after filming that little segment, I pulled up on my phone because it got me thinking. There's not really a good signal here, so it's hard to pull up any information. But now I do remember, you know, something about the forcible removal about the Cherokee. It actually, they started around 1838. A lot of the ones that were in the earlier 1830s were like the Choctaw, that were more indigenous to northern Mississippi, western Tennessee area, some of northern Alabama, that area over there. The Choctaw, there was, I don't know, I think about 14,000 of them eventually started out when, and, you know, they ran into all kinds of things. Many of them died. A lot of them froze to death. There was a really rough winter there, in like either 1832 or 33. They faced flash floods. They had all kinds of things. But the Cherokee, who were, you know, at that time, John Ross was the chief. They started being removed, I think, in 1838. So it was a little bit later. They kind of worked their way from west to east with that. And that went on for 3 or 4 years. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate on my point on that. over there or what? Fun little 90 minutes.